Hello, this is Matt Monfiles, and this is my policy analysis, review, and recommendations final project for developing socially just policy. The social policy we will be examining concerns housing in Iowa. The specific topic is accessory dwelling units, or ADUs for short. An ADU is a self-contained, smaller residential unit located on the same lot as a primary single-family home. It features independent living facilities, including a kitchen, bathroom, and sleeping area. ADUs can be detached, such as a backyard cottage, attached, such as an addition, or converted from existing spaces, such as basements or garages. The policy to consider for this topic is Iowa Senate File 592, a bill signed and enacted in 2025. This legislation is an act regulating accessory dwelling units by counties and cities. It states that Iowa counties shall allow a minimum of one accessory dwelling unit on the same lot as a single-family residence, following several design requirements. To examine this policy, the policy analysis framework described in the Social Policy and Social Change textbook by Jimenez and others is used. Points to consider include the social problem, the policy's objectives, its effects, its implications, and alternatives to the policy. The social problem this policy addresses is housing supply and affordability. While ADUs are not a new concept, there has been a recent resurgence in their use due to rising housing costs. There's a long, complex history of root causes contributing to current problems with housing supply and affordability, but within the context of ADUs, some key factors are especially relevant. So one factor is the history of exclusionary zoning. Land use planning in the United States has long privileged single-family homes, which has prevented creative solutions such as ADUs from being used. There's also a broad trend of barriers and legal challenges in the United States related to housing reform. An example is the historical trend of homeowners objecting to housing reforms with the mindset of "not in my backyard." Even when there may be theoretical support for housing policies, such as ADUs, they face objections, as people don't want to see them in their own neighborhood. One explanation behind this social problem is excessive regulation. A strict, large-scale effort to limit housing development to single-family homes has restricted other forms of housing supply that can be more affordable and accessible. As a result, ADUs have become more popular recently due to state and local efforts to relax regulations and adopt other measures to support ADU development. Another explanation is that an emphasis on single-family homes throughout history has ignored the changing needs of our population amid demographic shifts. While an abundance of single-family homes can serve target markets such as nuclear families, this does not meet the needs of a population that is increasingly diverse with a wide variety of other backgrounds. A cause of the problem is the long history of relying on single-family homes in housing development. Single-family homes have promoted inefficient land use, which makes housing less affordable. Another cause of the problem is a poor history of federal housing policy. Before the Great Depression, public housing was used to generate construction employment in addition to providing low-income housing. But then, from the 1930s to the end of World War II, private enterprise had been unwilling or unable to build dwellings affordable for working and middle-class families. This has left a long-term gap in housing affordability. The objectives, values, expectations, and targets of this policy reveal its purpose and ideology. Explicitly, this policy aimed to remove regulatory barriers and increase housing supply, but looking into it further shows that there were more motivations for the policy than just that. In practice, this policy aimed to restrict local control over social policy. This is especially relevant in Iowa, where it can be argued that the conservative-leaning state government engages in a power struggle with some liberal-leaning cities. Regardless of any political motivation, there is research to support this implicit objective. Some research suggests that state governments should preempt local zoning when it reduces affordable housing options, and there's limited local political will for change. It also suggests identifying feasible and effective zoning changes to increase affordable housing given local considerations. The policy's value premises involve the relationships among individual citizens, the market economy, and the government. First, the ADU legislation involves individual property rights as it enables homeowners to add to their properties. Second, research suggests that this policy on residential ADU rentals can be an effective way to increase the supply of affordable rental housing and provide supplemental income to homeowners without negatively impacting property values. Lastly, an emphasis on the role of the private sector in this policy, rather than on the government, reveals a value tied to its intentions. The physical transformation of neighborhoods at this scale requires significant involvement of for-profit homebuilders. The expectations of those who made this policy are primarily economic results. Rather than requiring large-scale development of new infrastructure to support housing, cities widely accept infill development with ADUs as an alternative to urban sprawl. The theoretical increase in housing supply created by this policy would also result in a decrease in rent prices with little use of taxpayer funds, if any. This policy directly targets existing homeowners and working-class renters, aiming to expand individual property rights and make housing more affordable. For indirect targets, in addition to local government authorities being affected at the administrative level, the construction industry is also influenced by a ripple effect from this policy. The research shows that a policy such as this creates a healthy cycle in which a supportive industry, such as construction, springs up to assist homeowners with adding to their properties. The effects of this policy unfold in both intentional and unintentional ways. To achieve the intended effects, enacting this legislation at the state level and enforcing this policy across all Iowa counties and cities creates a standardized approach to ADU regulations. Research also shows that this form of policy unlocks latent demand, meaning it identifies and addresses renters' needs through a new, innovative approach to housing for rental expansion. Other consequences of this policy were not intended. While this policy was implemented to prevent people from excluding ADU developments in local neighborhoods, other options for citizens to prevent ADUs emerged. An example is homeownership associations which offer homeowners an alternative way to exclude ADUs from the neighborhood. Another unintended result was a strain on infrastructure. Encouraging greater density in housing developments without a corresponding increase in supportive resources challenges the capacity of the existing infrastructure, which was not designed to accommodate such growth. Effects of this policy play out in different ways over time. In the short term, within 5 years, there will be more permits for ADUs that already exist but are not yet legally recognized. The research also reveals homeowners' interest in developing new ADUs on their property. In one survey of 502 single-family homeowners, up to 47% said they would be open to building an ADU. The short-term effects also entail administrative challenges for local governments as they adjust to the policy changes. Research shows that local governments tend to show an anti-growth bias. This means that the policies and approach to housing development taken by local governments often require significant change in response to this kind of policy. In the long term, over the next 5 years and beyond, additional effects will continue to unfold. This policy initiated a cultural shift in housing, with less emphasis on traditional single-family homes and greater acceptance of ADUs. The resulting decrease in lone detached homes will also develop over the longer term as this cultural shift continues, with homeowners adapting to the new policy. In concrete terms, this policy's implications affect the distribution of material resources. With greater income potential for property held by existing homeowners, the door opens for wealth to transfer to them through rising property values. Because of this, policymakers and planners need to ensure alignment between the goals of the ADU policy and homeowners' capacity to achieve them. Otherwise, this policy can create a barrier to entry for first-time buyers who are less able to afford higher home prices, as well as homeowners who lack the financial capacity to add an ADU to their property. Other implications of the policy are less tangible but still meaningful. The distribution of services, rights, and statuses will shift with the policy change. In the past, property owners' legal rights gave them broad authority to block less traditional housing formats, such as ADUs. This policy flips those rights, allowing them to build the same types of housing that were once excluded. Another implication is the elevation of tenant status, as renters have a wider range of options for safe, affordable housing if everything goes to plan. Alternative policies include actions and tools to support ADUs that go beyond reforming land use regulations and specifically address affordability concerns. Examples of alternative policy approaches include financing, affordable ADU rental and ownership strategies, broader legalization, and collaboration between the public and private sectors for ADUs. Homeowners with significant mortgage debt face difficulty securing additional loans or tapping into equity to finance ADU construction. An alternative policy can involve using state funding, such as loan guarantees and insurance, to cover the repayment of low-income ADU loans. Follow-up legislation that builds on the 2025 policy could make the use of ADUs more successful than it has been so far. One area to address would be ensuring a legal pathway for illegal ADUs. As an example, future legislation could be passed to waive penalties for bringing existing ADU units up to safety standards, which promotes safe housing for the most vulnerable tenants without displacing them. A final alternative could be to offer incentives, such as tax benefits, to encourage the addition of affordable ADUs in underserved locations. Research shows that few ADU permits have been filed in the most price-vulnerable communities, so this is a notable area of opportunity for an alternative policy. In addition to addressing practical concerns, these alternative policies have the potential to advance social justice. Increasing the supply of accessible, affordable ADUs promotes housing equity for a wider range of demographics. By working with new building and zoning codes, state and local governments can tap into the potential of these innovative, less formal housing arrangements. This also encourages oversight of existing illegal housing, ensuring the proper health and safety of these alternative housing situations, as well as affordability. In this policy analysis and review, the emerging theme is the opportunity to promote social equity over financial profit alone. While the economic side of this social policy does need attention, the role of social justice also factors into its long-term sustainability. By leveraging the strengths of the existing policy, monitoring its outcomes, and considering alternatives, it will enhance its benefits for the greatest number of people in the future. And here's my references and some more references. Thank you.